Rugby is a sport that is played all over the world. It is nearly 200 years old. In this time there's been a lot of major changes and developments to the game. Today we will be talking through the history of rugby and what developments and changes have happened over this period of time and whether or not they have been for the betterment of the sport. This is the history of rugby. Rugby is said to have originated in 1823 when William Webb Ellis picked up the ball in a football game and ran with it. When rugby was first played, there wasn't a clear set of laws, and it wasn't until 1845 the work began to draw up these first set of laws. These laws changed slightly year to year, and it wasn't until 1868 when there was a major shake-up of these laws. These laws provided the framework that rugby has built on to become what it is today. It wasn't until 1995 that rugby became a professional sport. Until this point, rugby was often played by doctors and people with full-time jobs that could afford to take time and play. After rugby turned professional, it became a much more serious sport, with players spending more time in the gym and training. This meant rugby became a faster and more physical game. These changes increased the dangers within the game. The Rugby World Cup has had a big impact on the sport. With the first tournament in 1987, there's been only a handful of winners. The tournament has contributed a lot to the game in this short time. It was thanks to the tournament that rugby turned into a professional sport. This was because of the viewing numbers and the overwhelming support. Another major tournament rugby has been in was the Olympics in the 1900s. Rugby was introduced in the Summer Olympics and it stayed all the way until 1924. However, in 2009 the Olympic Committee decided to include rugby again into the Olympics, but this time in the form of rugby sevens, and it was first played in 2016 Rio Summer Games.
How long have you been involved in rugby?
Oh gosh, playing it since I was about 8 years old, a rugby club to begin with, and I had two older brothers, so I was involved with rugby right from the get-go. So what am I now? 51, so what's that, 43 years? Is that right?
Yeah. During this time, what do you think the biggest changes have been to the game?
Yeah, I mean the game's gone professional. So when I was playing, it was an amateur sport. So the professionalism of the game has seeped down certainly into other levels, schoolboy level, club level. So people are now far more conditioned. There's far more analysis of the game and tactics, and maybe to an extent it's less free flowing than it used to be. But those are the major differences, I think.
So lots of changes in the rules, such as high tackles, probably been the major change in the game. So, for example, a few years ago, I think it used to be the neck or below. Now that got changed to the shoulder or below. So that probably helps, reduce the amount of head injuries, concussions that are in the sport for the game. But yeah.
Do you think the changes are for better or for worse?
It's a different game now for a different clientele, and like anything, it evolves. So you look at all sports from their codification, back 100 years ago, they've all changed as things evolve, as technology comes into play, as the game's faster now. We're getting surfaces like 3G surfaces, makes game faster, the technology with the ball, the way that players are conditioning themselves to play the game, make them faster. So yeah, the thing's evolving all the time. It's not to say it's a better game or worse game than before, it's just the game that people are playing today.
So I think these changes are for better sport because obviously there's a reduced risk in head injuries such as concussions and later problems such as dementia, and that is all reduced and helps the safety of the player.
And do you think the changes are more effective at higher levels of rugby?
Yeah, naturally, because there's a professionalism in the sport now. It's a job you can do, a job of work, and much like football has been for a number of years, there's the change at the top end. That's where the sort of cutting edge of the sport is, and people always like to look into to make improvements there, both in player welfare and player safety and player the way they play the game, their fitness, their conditioning. So yeah, and that gradually filters down to all the levels of rugby from community through to schools.